All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Paul. So, for anybody who wasn't here when he joined in, Paul is the Chief Executive President. I forget the title, but of Summit Technology Group out of Michigan. They do a lot of field work. They happen to be a Nautel rep, which was so he was already in my Rolodex. But they've also developed some RDS software and a few other pretty cool things. So I just wanted Paul to talk to RDS. And the reason that brought this up, uh, I do an RDS session for our own in-house training every year. And when I did it, I went through the dial here in Halifax and discovered that about half of the stations in this market are doing RDS right. Um, Out of the other half, two or three of them weren't doing RDS at all, and several of them were not doing it in the ideal manner. And the reason that's going to be important down the road is to do with hybrid radio, because as receivers with hybrid radio come out, they basically they look at your station and then they switch to your web stream or to your online presence when they run out of air signal. Right now, that's about 5% of the cars on the road are capable of that. Might be a little less. It's not a lot. It's single digits at the moment. But the challenge becomes if your RDS isn't properly configured, then you cease to exist for those radios in analog or digital or webcast. You just don't exist at all. So having it properly configured is kind of critical in that regard, or will be at some point. And not to mention, it just improves your dashboard presence. So on that note, I'll shut up and let Paul have the mic for a while.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to the SBE Canada chapter for letting me join you this afternoon and present on these topics. And I appreciate the introduction. So let me go ahead and sort of jump right in. So the first, a quick background on Summit Technology Group. As Jeff mentioned, we're out of Keego Harbor, Michigan, which is just northwest of Detroit. So we are, anywhere from a 40-minute to 40-minute drive to some of you folks in Canada and other places, obviously, get there via plane. But we have a variety of different services that we offer to the broadcast industry. The first being broadcast engineering on-site implementation. As Jeff mentioned too, we're Nautel dealers, so we work to resell and install Nautel transmitters, Axia, AOIP, and other brands and things of that nature. But everything from studio design build to transmitter site build and maintenance and things of that nature. We handle more so for the U.S. market, but regulatory compliance services, everything from routine FCC filings to on-site compliance audits. The software for broadcast, which is going to be, at least a component of what we'll be talking about today, one of which being Postmaster. But we have other products such as automated weather, streaming platform, things of that nature. And then something that is fairly new and actually not quite publicized as of yet. We are going to be launching in August a broadcast technical consulting arm of the company. So being able to do upgrade studies, interference studies, be able to deliver contour maps and usable statistics for whether it's acquisition of a station or simply internally for sales or minor and major modifications, things of that nature. So that's something that we're very excited to be able to offer here starting in August. But again, something that, we were so excited, we wanted to float it here first. So a little bit about myself. Ultimately, I've spent my entire life in broadcast. From the minute I was, from the moment I was in high school, I took a liking to broadcast, but always to the technical side of broadcast or the business side of broadcast as well. I went to Albion College, got a degree in economics and management, and worked in something completely different than accounting. I went to go work for Systems. At the time, they were in Southfield. Did applications engineering for them for a number of years. Worked on a lot of actually RDS middleware products, a lot of EAS integration products. Did a lot of the interfaces, did a lot of the API development work, a lot of the, hey, did you know that Enco can talk to a tape robot or something of that nature? Those were the types of products that I worked on most heavily. After several years at Enco, I received an offer from Multicam Systems, which is out of Montreuil, France, and something that and I know that they have somewhat of a presence in Canada as well at a number of stations. They do a visual radio product for broadcast, and so they so I did a lot of applications engineering, but sales and implementation of that product as well. And then I do have up there as well a couple of flags. I'm actually a dual citizen with Canada, so I don't get over there nearly enough, but I do have my little citizenship card from when I was a baby. So let's talk RDS, and let's talk as to what the heck was Jeff talking about? No one's doing it right. He's absolutely right. A lot of people are underutilizing. We'll use the term just for sake of pleasantries. People are underutilizing their RDS encoding capabilities. First and foremost, I would say that there are certainly a lot of different levels at which you can implement RDS. The sort of most advanced tools are going to come from something like a independent piece of hardware that encodes RDS, but that's not always necessary. At a more basic level, a lot of modern solid state transmitters that have built-in sort of all in one units will have onboard RDS encoding, and that's going to range from whether just simply static or have a dynamic option to it. So what do a lot of stations sort of get stuck in the rut of just simply title an artist, or they are encoding some PS scroll that just simply has hey, you're listening to this song on whatever station it is, and so one of the thoughts is that hey, okay, we're kind of covering the bare minimum. We're catering to sort of the lowest common denominator, right? Someone that's got maybe out of date equipment, but there are more advanced options for encoding, and you're going to be able to meet listeners with more modern in vehicle infotainment systems and all that, you're going to be able to meet them with with a much better, more polished experience, right? So, if you've ever dabbled with like radio text plus, right, RT plus, that's going to give sort of more of a MP3 player type of feel, right? Something that sort of allows people to see title and artist on different lines, see the album information on different lines. You can include short bits of data about the track. So when did it when was it released? Did it gain any level of Billboard charts, or what year did this peak on the Billboard 100 or something of that nature? We see some of our clients using sort of editorial content, right, that can be published along with that. The next is sort of an idea, and I should preface it with these are all sort of ideas to kind of expand the use of RDS, and then we'll talk about sort of the technical methods on how to do this, and then ultimately too the ways in which your stations can monetize this, right? So news, weather, sports, traffic, all of that is also something that could be delivered via RDS. So, whether it's news headlines, breaking news, things of that nature, primarily things that have a local implication, right? So things, such as school closures, things such as, road closures, or police presence in an area, asking residents to avoid it. Weather, of course, that can be both routine or more of a weather alert. So severe weather can be delivered, can deliver alerts via RDS, or routine weather as well. And then sports and traffic, sports scores, match game information, things of that nature. Audience interaction, this is where we can elicit calls from listeners. We can queue callers for, say, some sort of a station contest. I put in there in parentheses, and you'll find out why in a future slide, but even national contesting, we have ways to synchronize those sorts of calls to participate. So we have sort of tools to enable national contesting, things like that. And then monetization methods. One of the sort of the low-hanging fruit in terms of monetization is, as you pair your oral advertising with a text-based means. So that's RDS. It's incredibly effective when you're talking telephone numbers, when you're talking web addresses, things of that nature. And then, of course, speaking of web addresses, as Jeff was mentioning earlier, the hybrid radio needs that that require some sort of URL encoded there as well, is going to be sort of a future-proofing concept. So let's talk, since we're talking to engineers, let's talk about some of the challenges in the traditional or the existing architecture for RDS transport. I mentioned in here, sort of in the body here, that there was a recent Jacobs Media survey that did a similar thing that Jeff was describing. And the survey revealed that an average of 6% of mid-market broadcasters are utilizing PAD to its full potential. So, the methodologies were published in radio world, but effectively gave sort of a good, better, best, and non-existent grade to various stations in, I believe it was Detroit and Little Rock, Arkansas, and potentially a few other markets. Mentioned in here too, even stations and markets that are fully realizing the benefits of RDS are still there. There's still some technical challenges that I'll address here on this slide. So let's go through them. We've identified 6 sort of hurdles that some folks will say, oh, that's not a problem. We can handle that. Others say, yep, nope, this is a challenge at least one or more of our sites, right? It's not always the case that every site is going to be identical or as easy to manage from an IT capacity as your maybe easiest site. So static IP addresses, traditionally getting metadata, song title and artist from a studio to a non-co-located transmitter site requires the use of static IP address. There are a lot of sort of methods that have been used to sort of circumnavigate this. You have your dynamic DNS host names and things of that nature, which work fairly well, not all the time, and there's always that sort of that update period, when an IP lease renews. And if you do have a static IP, or if you have the capability of getting a static IP, a lot of times those can be fairly costly. Once you have static IP, or if you do, you need to set up port forwarding. So port forwarding is something that probably a lot of us on this call say, well, that's routine for me. That's not necessarily a complex task, but it is nonetheless. It is a risk. You run the risk of opening up equipment on your network to vulnerabilities, to hacks, and some of them could be fairly good natured, and they're just trying to spoof the text that gets pushed out to dashboards. Other times, it's a much more serious exploitation. Album artwork, has not traditionally been incorporated into PAD, at least not in the sort of same channel as what's being delivered to RDS, because of course RDS, analog RDS doesn't require or can't utilize it. But in a future slide, I'm going to share with you sort of a platform of tools that allows you to incorporate that for things like web streams, HD radio, and things of that nature.
Well, and worth noting too that going forward to RDS2, there is the potential to add album art, but that's still really early days and the standard's not totally defined. Okay, that's all.
Good point. Thank you. Scalability as well, has never really been addressed. A lot of middleware products will have multiple destinations, right? So the ability to send to multiple RDS encoders, or an RDS encoder, a web stream, a HD importer, a digital sign, whatever. But at some point that, level of scalability and flexibility, runs out. So the traditional architecture really has been designed for a single studio and a single transmitter site, and you're pushing that content, one way. Cybersecurity, again, talking port forwarding, the various vulnerabilities that are introduced when you expose expose hardware or software on your network to the outside world by opening up ports and things of that nature. And then the ease of use, right? Even if the cybersecurity aspect is not a concern, the ease of use is sometimes it's challenging to set all this up, maintain this all, and then things are able to break when IPs change or things of that nature. And I want to just take a look for just 1 second. Is there I see potentially some chats. Jeff, are you watching those chats? Is there anything that's like a question or anything at this point?
No, we're a lot of it was related to modulation, but I'm keeping an eye on that as it goes.
Okay, perfect.
I'll break in and interrupt you if anything comes up. Perfect.
Yep, sounds good. And then as a side note, if anyone has questions, feel free to throw it in the chat, and then Jeff will relay that to me. So what have we done about this as we see sort of a deficiency in the traditional means of pad delivery? So we've come up with a platform. Okay, this does not replace any component of the existing RDS chain outside of the bare metal IT components, right? So this is not an RDS encoder. This is not RDS middleware even. It is merely a connector that enables your station to push content, push pad data, rich pad data from a studio site, and be able to deliver it immediately to an unlimited number of endpoints in no time at all. And it doesn't necessarily always need to come from the studio side of things, right? So the way in which we've sort of architected this solution is there's a push-pull design where a variety of different tools can push and a variety of different tools can pull. So sports scores you might have coming from one API provider. Your metadata comes from your automation system through middleware. Perhaps you have a stock market report that gets delivered also from a different API provider, things of that nature. So what's nice is everything is on a common port. So there's no need for port forwarding, things of that nature. Port 80, standard HTTP or HTTPS 443 are the ports that it utilizes. So there's not an instance where you would get into a problem with blocked ports, or hey, my wireless ISP at the transmitter site doesn't allow me to open these ports, or doesn't give me the option to utilize a static IP, or simply the static IP that they're asking for is 150 a month, and okay, we could get it if we really needed it, but this is something that sort of eliminates the need for something like that. The authentication process is really twofold. So there's a very strong client ID and password sort of component to it. And the web server is secured, by an SSL certificate to prevent endpoints from being spoofed. So there's no way to basically be encoding RDS, having your RDS encoder encode data that is being published by some unauthorized user, right? Some hacker or 9 times out of 10, it's probably just some smart teenager that gets a hold of the public IP at your transmitter site and wants to push something. So the authentication really allows for a very bulletproof, end-to-end, design to get data specifically from the endpoints you allow to the transmitter site and to the RDS equipment. The pad improvement, what we mean by that is something where there's the ability to alter this data in the cloud before it gets pulled down. So are the title and artist spelled correctly? Is the album name included? Do you want it included? Is the album artwork provided? Are you sending to an endpoint that could utilize the album artwork? And if not, do you want to add the album artwork in the cloud to the cloud endpoint, right? So Postmaster can generate all of these things in the cloud remotely, and it can also do things like text replacement, right? So we all remember the CeeLo Green song from years ago that that a lot of the broadcasters said, well, we're gonna call it "Forget You," and there, needless to say, there were challenges with what was actually sent to people's dashboards, and it could offend people's sensibilities. With this, you have the ability to replace certain text. So if you are a group and have various stations that kind of maintain their own music libraries, things of that nature, but you want to have some control over what's being pushed out to dashboards, all of that is something that is possible within Postmaster. And then the delivery, it's complete. Once everything's ready, everything's been cleaned up, album artwork's been added, authentication to get the data in, authentication to get the data out. It gets delivered to the RDS or the HD encoding equipment. And we actually just finished up. We're waiting on a prototype now of an Inovonics 732 model of RDS encoder that actually has Postmaster built in. So a user will be able to, in a matter of minutes, we predict, it'll be a matter of minutes, an engineer or someone who, maybe someone that lacks the expertise to forward these ports, someone from the programming department maybe runs out there and can set up, can start inbounding metadata very, very quickly. Basically just with client ID and password. So effectively the Inovonics units that I would say probably starting in August, the Inovonics units that are leaving the factory will have firmware on it that you can go right into the interface, put in your 19-digit client ID, put in the password that you prefer or that you set up in the interface, and you'll be receiving metadata from your studio in, like I said, a matter of minutes. Very, very easy to set up. And then again, this is just sort of a recap of what can be done, what ultimately whatever can be generated from a webhook or from a web-based API can make its way into your Postmaster endpoint. So if you decide, song title and artist is great, and we can, of course, do that with our broadcast middleware, which, by the way, most RDS middleware at this point in time have the capability of handling an HTTPS secure webhook. So there's really not a need for any kind of special software on the studio end. Most automation companies have the means to get the data into the Postmaster cloud, but you can also incorporate sources from other places, weather, sports. We are working on building out an advertising, sort of like a light, think about like a light traffic software in the cloud that can sort of incorporate with your automation library, and sort of use the triggers to trigger text-based advertising as well. Same with images, logos, or pictures of a particular car or truck that's on sale that month, things of that nature. And part of it too is can your stations benefit from monetizing the weather reports, monetizing the sports scores and things like that. Potentially something that your sales department can go out and sell that as a separate item. And then lastly, just sort of where we're heading with this particular product. Of course, building. We're building a platform, right? This is not just a product. This is a connector for the information that you want to put on the dash to your RDS or your HD importer. And so, we're actively working to establish industry partners, both on the hardware side, encoders and things of that nature, and the software side. So, folks that get the information into our system. And then, on the user side of things, radio broadcasters, networks, as I mentioned, it can be a one-to-many architecture. So, I could be feeding, hundreds or thousands of transmitters, or RDS encoders or web streams or whatever, all from a single endpoint. So it's a very very powerful and scalable architecture there. And then go ahead.
Question from Willie, asking if the RDS requires a monitor screen to display, and I guess the question is, on the send end, are you able to monitor what you're sending? On the receive end, obviously it displays on the car stereo, but depending on your car. But yeah, on the send end, are you able to see it?
Yeah, this is so what's being built out now is a web front end to be able to see exactly what's playing, and kind of show a short history of here's the last the last few things that have been transported. So the one thing we're not able to do, obviously, is after say the Inovonics encoder, for example, encodes something, and they put it into their whatever their radio text string looks like, or scrolling text looks like, without actually demodulating the signal. We don't have a direct way to log what that looks like, but we can certainly log the data that supplied
Right.
the encoder.
So you're looking at the input side, and that's cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're trying to break apart a modulated composite baseband, that gets a little more challenging.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So but networks, radio broadcasters, and then I would say zone casting, which is being sort of temporarily authorized here in the States for experimental purposes. The broadcasters that decide to adopt that architecture are going to need ways to slice and dice their the data that they push out to all of their various all the transmitter boosters that they rely on for that. So
yeah, for reference, because we don't have anything like that here in Canada at the moment. Zone casting is essentially a single frequency network where the FCC has authorized the ability for them to send unique program to the different boosters. So they can geo-target, like you could do a flash sale on Young and Blower and not send the information to Etobicoke, as an example. Now, the challenge is, and well, the technical challenges are many, to put it bluntly. But anytime you've got a single frequency network, if you're feeding different audio signals on, it's co-channel interference. So it's going to, in the overlap zone, it's going to be, I have words to describe it that I can't use in public. But yeah, there's some challenges involved in it. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops. Okay, carry on, Paul.
Oh, that's ultimately it. I would definitely I'm definitely interested to hear if anybody's got any questions about anything that I discussed today. I can go as in depth as you'd like, or keep it as high level.
So I do have one quick question. There's a lot of talk these days about RT plus, the enhanced radio text, additional data. How does that impact you guys with this?
That's a great question. So this was sort of built around the concept of RT plus. The database that all of this content is stored in is effectively the RT plus tags. So you have the ability to sort of construct your output stream, or excuse me, output string in say, for example, the Innovonic 732, and kind of use these tags as like building blocks ultimately. So you can serve users or listeners rather that have a modern radio that's full RT plus compliant, or compatible, or you can still serve folks that have more legacy equipment and be able to provide the scrolling text and things of that nature. Basically the database kind of was optimized for those exact tags. Mm-hmm. And then the nice thing too is you have the ability, and this is really more of a hardware manufacturer sort of limitation or request, is you have the ability to either request all of the data that's available for that endpoint, or you can request selective data. So for example, for equipment that is hardware based, maybe has bandwidth limitations as to or memory limitations on the hardware, we have the ability to selectively distribute the metadata that they ask for. And what we are planning to do as well is open up endpoints, or excuse me, open up parts of the API to station personnel, so that they can actually sort of develop tools to work with this. So for example, if they say, well, I want to build my own custom web player, or hey, we have some streaming provider, and they have this web player, and right now it's fairly limited in the metadata that that can be sent to it, and we really like all the data that Postmaster is able to produce for us. Well, that's great. We have the ability to expose that, divulge some of our API calls and say, okay, fine, go ahead and build the web player that you want, using that streaming provider, and so on and so forth, but harnessing our basically our metadata delivery.
Gotcha. Now, one other thing, and this is more an opinion question. So a lot of stations put the artist and song title in the radio text field. There are some that put it in the PS field, the postscript, whether they're running usually with DPS. What's your preference? I know David Layer at NAB Labs says that at this point he thinks radio text should be the only used for that, and DP should only be used for station positioning statements. But there are still a lot of cars out there that will only receive one or the other. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I like to see I like to see stations that can cater to the more modern radio, where things are going, but then also be able to offer to that legacy equipment. Hey, we're going to concatenate this string of text that includes some of the data from our radio text. So receivers that are just receiving the PS scroll have the ability to still get the dynamic data, get the song title and artist, and a little bit of station branding, a little bit of identification, things like that. That's another thing that it's almost sort of too obvious really to even put into a presentation. But like station imaging is vitally important, right? Not to us engineers, but to programming, to sales. They are wild about station imaging, and so keeping station imaging up to date, keeping it consistent, keeping it routine as it relates to how often it's being pushed to your RDS. All of that is vitally important. So I say RT and RT Plus are definitely the tools to use for dynamic data. But there's also ways to to send that in most encoders, and translate that to a concatenated string in the PS.
Right. On the same note, I'll throw that out for everybody else. If you're not, and I say everybody else, I know there's only a few of us on here, but we do record this and it'll be posted on our website later. Assuming Dave or I remembers to send it to Justin so we can get it on the website. But anyway, having said that, the other thing to remember, if you're not registered with Radio DNS, you should be, because any connected car that can look up a station logo will either go to Gracenote or Radio DNS. And if you don't monitor your logo in both of those sites, then you stand a very good chance of the logo that's presented not being your current one. And that happens more often than a lot of folks would like to admit. And I say Gracenote and Radio DNS. Those are the only two I know about. But Ron, Dave, and I know Dave, you said you had a couple of things about RDS too, so I'm gonna throw you on the spot
Yeah,
here.
the legacy, short text version of the RDS. Now you expressed that a preference for having the dynamic text on that as well, at least in a concatenated form. I don't know. I got a question whether or not on these legacy receivers, especially in Dash, who's looking at a scrolling text across a short display?
And that's a
The,
challenge.
to
Yeah.
me it seems the priority where you're getting the best bang for your display would be the station identification and pushing the dynamic stuff to
Yeah.
the more modern and larger field.
I know for us on the PS field, we just put Cove FM, just our positioning call. And for an eight character for the older, because we've got a lot of 2010 2013 cars that they're barely out of LCD, let alone or LED screens, let alone getting scrolling text. So yeah, and then on the radio text we just put the artist song title there. But you're right, it's going to vary by market for sure. Because if you're in an area with a higher end clientele, if you will, and a lot of newer cars, then you've got a lot more ability to play with that.
And medium and small markets are all diary markets, so it's all about the station identification in those markets.
Yep. So cool. Anything else? I mean, we're a hair past the top of the hour, but if anybody's got anything great, going once, going twice, nothing in the chat. Paul, I want to thank you very, very much for your time. And as I say, this is recorded, so I've kept you talking long enough to make sure that your contact information stayed on the screen in case anybody has any questions. They can always certainly reach out to me, and I know where to find you as well.
Perfect.
Perfect. So there you go. On that note, folks, not hearing any other new business, we'll declare this meeting officially adjourned. So Ron and Dave, you guys have got your homework, and certainly if you need to drag me in for anything, reach out. Like I said, this month I'm available. After that, you're on your own. But we'll get her sorted out and get it moving. All right. Thanks very much, folks, and we'll see you all. What's next month's meeting, Dave? Do you know off the top of your head?
Give me a second here.
Sorry, I
next month is I should have been ready with that one. Next month will be the 13th.
All right. I think I'll be on the road, but try to join in from wherever I am. And barring anything else, we'll see y'all next month. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks, Jeff.